Chairman Cox, we are now live and you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to call this meeting to order this Tuesday, March the 9th, 2021 of the Pitt County Department of Social Services Board. And we're going to start our meeting today by observing a moment of silence, a moment of silent prayer.
Chairman Cox, we are now live and you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to call this meeting to order this Tuesday, March the 9th, 2021 of the Pitt County Department.
Chairman, hang on just one second.
And we're going to start our meeting today by observing a moment of silence, a moment of silent prayer.
Chairman Cox, we are now live and you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to call this meeting to order this Tuesday, March the 9th, 2021 of the Pitt County Department.
Chairman, hang on just one second. All right. Technical difficulties averted. Chairman, you now have the floor again. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. It's a rough start. Okay, hello. I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting of the Pitt County Department of Social Services, Tuesday, March the 9th, 2021. And we're going to open our meeting today by observing a moment of silent prayer, silent meditation. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. What we're going to do first, since we're meeting virtually today, and I'm going to have Susan call the roll so we can identify everybody that's on the call today. So Susan, could you go ahead and do that?
Yes, sir. Chair Cox.
Present.
Vice Chair Bunch.
Present.
Mr. Dancy.
Present.
Miss Nelson.
Present.
Miss Perkins Williams. She does not appear to be here at this time.
Okay, well, hopefully she can join us. So we're going to start into our agenda today. Anything for public comment, Susan?
No, sir, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. You should have all received a copy of today's agenda. And so what I'd like to do now is either adopt or revise today's agenda. Could I have a motion to adopt, please?
So moved.
Okay, and a second. Okay, Susan, could you call the roll?
Chair Cox.
Agree?
Vice Chair Bunch.
Agree.
Mr. Dancy.
Agree.
Miss Nelson.
Agree.
Okay, thank you, Susan. And again, in your packet, you should have had a copy. And let's do the same. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And again, Susan, could you call the roll, please?
Chair Cox.
Approve?
Vice Chair Bunch.
Approved.
Mr. Dancy.
Approved.
Miss Nelson.
Approved.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, first on our agenda today is we have employee recognition, and it looks like we have a new hire that we're gonna meet today. Is that right, Jan?
That's right. We have several. Let's see if I can get my screen share going.
Okay.
And right here we go. So our employees that we're excited to recognize today. Our first one is Brandy Harper. Brandy is in our permanency planning unit, and she has come to us from Greene County. So we're thrilled to have her with us. Our next new hire is Sequita Mungo Mitchell. She's worked with us briefly before, and she's come back to us from Edgecombe County. She too is in our permanency planning division. We have Runette Candies. She's worked in Johnston County at DSS, and she's most recently come to us from Free Will Children's Home. So we are also excited to have her in permanency planning. And I know Tammy Lewis has owned the meeting, and I'm sure she would second that to have these three folks with us. And then we're excited to have Michael Harris. Michael is in our adult services unit. He's doing APS, and he's come to us from Hyde County. So we are thrilled to have all of these folks with us as part of our agency now. So welcome aboard, and I'll be so thrilled when we can actually meet people in person.
Absolutely, absolutely, Jan. And you let them know that the board welcomes them, and we look forward to meeting them maybe when we can get back in person. I'm just thinking how much better we've gotten at this in terms of, Jan, you're able to pull up a screen and we've been at
Don't
this.
jinx me.
So anyway, well done. Okay, and welcome. So, our big item for discussion today is certainly our budget. And I hope everybody's had the opportunity to go through it and study it and look at it. And I want to thank Jan and the staff and everybody that's played a role in this in terms of things. And I reflect upon a couple things this is just not just a 1 month process that I think Jan begins to talk about the budget for next year, probably pretty quick after we finish up this year's budget in terms of once it's approved. So, it's quite a process. And again, I want to thank everybody for their role in terms of putting this together. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Elliott and to begin our discussion.
Okay, and we do have staff present, so if you have questions about the budget as we go through it, I'll pause periodically to give you the opportunity to ask those questions, and certainly we'll reach out to the staff who can also help us with that. So I'm going to share my screen again, and let's see if we can't do this. I will say to you that you have heard a lot of this. Now, why is it not going the way I want it to go? You've heard a lot of this already in the retreat. We talked at length about this during the retreat, and so we have refined it significantly since that point. But so this is the culmination of all the work that was done, and so we'll start with what we're really focused on right now. And so this is a summary of what we're proposing, why we're proposing it, and certainly what initiatives that we've been working on over the last several years that we believe have had an impact in a positive way on the agency, on the services we provide, and on the budgets that we work with. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that you know what your tabs are in your book, because I'm going to refer to the tabs. And if you've got your book present, certainly as I refer to the tabs, please take a look at those if you want to. This first discussion would be part of tab 1, which is the letter to the board and to the county about what has changed in our budget. So as you look at the budget appropriations from the county's perspective, these are the county dollars after all the revenues have come in. The adopted budgets, as you can see, stay pretty steady for a couple of years and then they increase. Steady for a couple of years and then they increase. And so this is the year of the increase. It's a little less than $1.69 million increase for a total of $13,374,028 of county dollars that we are saying need to be appropriated after all the revenues are looked at. So one of the things that we did this year was take a look and say, so what is the impact the county's taxes, et cetera. And so if you look at the county appropriation per citizen in Pitt County, it's about $70 a person. And that it's hard to imagine for me multi-million dollars, but I can certainly identify with $70. So we generate a lot of money coming back in from Washington and from Raleigh through this budget. Our total budget is $360,652,169 when you think about all the Medicaid payments, the food stamps, the child care, all of those different projects and programs that we operate that result in money being plowed back into Pitt County. So about a dollar of every dollar that the county appropriates for us, that 1.69 million, $26 come back to Pitt County that are taxes that our citizens have paid. So we're bringing them back to Pitt County to be used here in Pitt County. And additionally, about $16 million each year is generated in child support payments that are then spent in Pitt County. And certainly our employment programs put people back to work. And as people are working, that too generates dollars circulating in Pitt County. So all of this grows the Pitt County economy. So if you go look at move into tab 3, this is where we start talking about actual needs. And we're going to start with the positive, and that is that foster care has changed dramatically over the last several years. If you look from 2015 out to 2018, you can see steady growth. And then we started coming back down. And so what I want to say to you is in 2018, we had 218 0 to 18-year-olds and 18 to 21-year-olds. So 238 children or young adults we were responsible for planning and caring for. Today, as of the end of February, and that's even beyond what this is showing, we are now at 174 children 0 to 18 and 19 young adults 18 to 21, or a total of 193 folks that we're responsible for. So about a 17% reduction from the high point. And we can say that, we've stabilized our workers, which is great because every change of a social worker has a negative impact on a child. We can say that we can thank the county, certainly, for their investment in this. The county has increased positions. We've done a variety of resources put in place. All of that's had a positive impact. And then so you'll hear some about some of the things that we've put in place later in the presentation. And to have this caseload down is important because of Families First legislation that is coming effective in October for the state of North Carolina. So that's going to be a good place, a good position for us to be in. Due to this reduction, we've been able to reallocate one position to an area that we needed it more. So again, another positive from having the foster care caseload go the way it's going. In in-home services, however, we have seen a different scenario. We have seen steady growth in our in-home services caseload. It was up, then it started coming down, and then in 2020 we got to 305 cases by the end of December in 2020. So we have gone in the wrong direction here. And trying to think about why that happened. The drivers, there are a whole lot of drivers to this. One is the growth in trying to keep children in their homes longer. So you do the assessment, and if this family needs more support, you move it to in-home service, move the family to in-home services where the social workers can work and try and stabilize things. And hopefully the family doesn't need protective services any longer. But if you can't keep things stabilized, then the children move to foster care. So sometimes it's important to get the courts involved at this level so that we can put a little extra, oomph into having families work through the things that they need to work through. And that probably is keeping cases open a little longer. The other thing certainly is the growth in child protective services over the last few years. That too has been a factor as children have come in through that portal, and then a lot of children have moved into in-home services. So in addition to the 305 cases in 2020 that they carried at some point in-home services, they also had 35 courtesy cases for other counties that this particular unit carried. So it's been significant for this particular unit. Now you take a look at child protective services and you can see that again, the caseload has slowly grown over the years. You'd have a slight dip and then it would grow back up and come back a little stronger. COVID obviously caused a slight drop in reports when compared to last year. And we particularly saw that drop in the April-June quarter, the last quarter of the last fiscal year. But the numbers started picking back up again, and we had a little over 1,100 families that we served last year. And the types of cases that we were seeing were much more complex. There was significant trauma seen in some of the situations. And so I've sat down and looked at the data, the more recent data. And since July, so the last 7 months, we had 799 reports accepted, with 17.3% of those reports coming from the medical personnel and 10.5% coming from law enforcement. And schools, who are usually our biggest reporters because they've not been in session on a regular basis, only accounted for 9.6% of the reports during that period of time. So I think that clearly helps point to the fact that we're seeing cases that are more traumatized, have more medical issues, much more complex cases. So that has been driving a lot of what we've been doing. So I will say that we invited the state and Pitt County had a conversation. And we decided, along with them, that a review of our protective services section would be a really good thing to do to help us take a look at whether we have adopted all of the changes that have been done over the last few years from a practice standpoint. Are we meeting the timeframes? Are we doing what we needed to do? And so the state came down to test a review instrument, and they spent nearly a week with us reviewing records. And so we had one of our staff paired with one of the state staff for every record that was being reviewed. And it was really, really helpful in taking a look at practice issues and keying in on the areas that we needed to improve. But one of the key findings, as you see in this letter dated December 16, is staffing. And so, as you see, they note that some of the results of our record review are from a deficit in full-time employee positions in child welfare. Pitt County staff to case ratio for CPS in-home services exceeds the state standard of 1 child welfare worker for every 10 cases. We have only 60% of the CPS in-home social workers necessary to meet the needs of children and families in CPS. Additionally, all counties in North Carolina that have 9 to 12 child welfare supervisors, and we have 10, by the way, have more than one program administrator or manager, with the exception of Pitt County, who has only one program administrator. So you look at that and you go, okay, well, this tells us something about what's going on in in-home services and in our child welfare program area. So with that letter, we were working on the budget, and verbally they had suggested to us that we needed at least 10 in-home social workers, which would also mean you'd need 2 supervisors. And we quickly realized that that was probably not going to be an option. So Tammy and I sat down and we talked at length, and we came to the conclusion, based on the data that was provided to us through our staff and looking at trends for the year, that we would ask for the Child Protective Services Program Manager that's referenced in the letter, that we would ask for 1 in-home services social work supervisor, and 4 in-home social services social workers. And so the supervisor, because you need to have a 1 in 5 ratio supervisor to social workers, and the 2 supervisors we already have together are supervising 9 folks. So this would plus 3 individuals that do other things like prevention services. We also have our child and family team facilitator assigned in these units. So we would need the additional supervisor. So that letter drove those 6 requests. We also are asking for a Child Protective Services social worker for the investigations portion of it. And we're doing that because we had such a significant amount of turnover. We have a significant amount of folks out at various points. And we're finding that when that happens, things tend to fall through the cracks. And so having an additional floater, we called it a floater position. We've gotten those before. Having an additional floater position we felt could really help us during those time periods, because you could make sure that somebody got out to take care of those cases when there were vacancies. And I'll tell you, our after hours vacancy has existed for almost 8 hours, and 8 months. So we are struggling when we have vacancies for that length of time. It's been tough to get anybody into that position. So those are the social work related positions that we're asking for. We're also asking for a child welfare attorney and a child welfare paralegal. And we've asked for this for several years now. Currently, we have one attorney, that would be Ms. Petrasso, who is split between child support, adult services, CPS, and she also serves as the lead attorney. We have another half-time attorney for child support, and we have 2.5 paralegals that work in the child support division. In CPS, or child welfare in general, not just CPS, we have 1.5 attorneys devoted to child protective services. And they also back up adult services and child support when needed. And that happened just the other day. We have 1 paralegal that is split between APS, CPS, guardianship, foster care, and serves as the lead paralegal. That's an awful lot for these folks to try and do and keep up with. And just to give you, in our budget document, we list a lot of the things that were done this past year, which was a slow year because court had some ups and downs this past year. But to think about the other things that these folks do, they do quarterly staffings with our foster care workers, our CPS workers, and our APS workers to make sure that we're staying on target from the legal standpoint. They provide training to staff. They confer with staff about court filings and making sure that we're doing what is appropriate. They prep staff for court, particularly those staff that are new social workers that have never been to court. The 2 full-time folks also serve on call. Every day of the week, there's one of them on call. They work with our service folks to make sure when we get subpoenas for records that we're doing what's appropriate from that standpoint. And the paralegal helps get those copies made. They file motions. They file accountings with the clerk of court for our adult services guardianship cases. They also, besides the actual filings that are listed in the budget book, they do, when you're looking at foster care, they do permanency planning hearings, termination of parental right hearing, guardianship hearings in child welfare. So, they are involved in a lot that we do and really and truly need this help. We have been defending more appeals, especially in termination of parental rights. We have contracted that out. This year we tried to do one in-house, and we really would like to bring them all back in-house if we had the resources to do that. We spent about $18,000, $19,000 in appeals work on outside attorneys at $250 an hour. So we feel very, very strongly that we need every one of these 9 proposed positions. So I will stop right now and see if anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Elliott?
None at this time.
Not at this time.
So one question, Jan, in terms of the legal department, so how many currently are there how many do you have on staff now?
How many total we have? Yeah. Okay, we have 3 FTEs as attorneys, and we have 3.5 FTEs as paralegals.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? If not, I'll keep moving.
Okay.
Okay. So, The next area we're going to talk about is in tab 4, and it's our adult protective services area. This is an area we've been struggling with and been asking for staff, and the county has provided a little bit of staff every year. So we certainly appreciate that. We have had a growth in two staff people prior to this year. That has been very helpful. The caseload has had a 53% growth since 2015. We took 606 reports that we acted on about 80% of them in 2020. In 2015, we took about 396 reports. So a steady growth. This particular chart that you see here is looking at it by quarter. So you can see that there are peaks and valleys as the quarter goes on. But again, sort of a steady rise. And certainly that is reflective of the aging of the county. Not that adult protective services is just elderly individuals. It could be folks with other cognitive issues who can't, make these decisions or take care of themselves safely. But you know for sure that we are an aging population, not just in Pitt County or North Carolina, but nationally. We are not meeting our state benchmarks in adult protective services. And the staffing issues that we already had were severely exacerbated by COVID. We've struggled with turnover in this particular part of the agency due to the stress of the job. And it's not just a one-year kind of thing. That has been going on now for a couple of years. So this is an area that we really feel like we need to focus on in this coming budget. If you look at our guardianship caseload, again, you see that kind of almost a straight up there. We've had 113% growth in that time period. We had 85 cases during the 2015 year point in time. We had 181 cases at the end of December in 2020. So huge growth. Staff growth has not kept pace with the guardianship growth. We've again added a couple of positions here during that period of time. So about a 60% growth in staff and 113% growth in caseload. And the guardianship cases that we have are very different compared to the guardianship cases that we've had in the past. Over the years, this has been changing. We're not talking about the 70 to 80-year-old individual with dementia who's in a nursing home and needs somebody to make medical decisions for themselves. We're talking about a very dynamic group of individuals, some as young as 18, that could be intellectually delayed, mentally ill, or have other cognitive impairments. And then you add to that some of these folks are, folks like you and me who've had middle income, and so therefore they might have monies in addition to Social Security. They might have property, and all of that gets factored into what we are doing as we work with cases in guardianship. So again, feel very strongly that we need some help there. We are proposing this year 2 social workers, one for adult protective services and one for guardianship. And since I've already kind of talked about what's going on there, I'm going to focus on the other 2 positions. The income maintenance caseworker 3 is the person who works with our long-term care program and our in-home programs. These are the folks that make sure the bill gets paid when somebody goes into a nursing facility, a special assistance facility, or who needs somebody in their home to help with services that could be paid for by the SA in-home program or CAP or something like that. Each of these workers right now carries a caseload of 480 or thereabouts, and they also take and process 15 to 20 applications a month for long-term care assistance. Generally, the person coming in to make that application is a responsible individual, like a daughter or a brother or something, who may not have all the information that's needed to do this application. And so it takes a little extra work to get what we need in place to find out whether folks are going to be eligible or not. These are complex cases. We have to look at property. And with property, it's not just do you own a house, it's who's living in that house. Because if it's the spouse, you might not have to count that house. If there's heir property or lifetime rights, those things have value. And so you've got to take a look and figure all that out. Are there vehicles? Is there cash value on insurance? What kinds of incomes do they have? Pensions as well as Social Security, annuities, whatever. Has anything been transferred in the last, I think it's 6 years now? They have to look back that far, looking at bank statements that far back, looking at a lot of things that far back. So we need to be able to process these cases timely, and the facilities need to know if someone's going to be eligible or not as quickly as possible, because while we're trying to make that decision, the bill is growing. And so some days they're not real happy with us if we're not getting the bills paid. We've tried to use a part-time person to supplement here, but we still have delays. And so we feel very strongly that we need this additional position to help fill some of that gap and to make that caseload not quite as large as it currently is. The final position we're asking for here is for the Adult Services Division. It is an office assistant 4. Right now, all of our services division, and that's roughly 90 some staff, have 2 office assistants that they share. And those folks do data entry, background checks, they run reports, they help copy records and redact records when lawyers and other folks want records from our CPS and APS or foster care areas. And frequently we're finding that's happening more and more every year. I think we said about 100 cases this past year we had to make copies of records for, and it had to go to every party to that action. So needless to say, adult services trying to share with child welfare is more and more needing their own individual to support their division. If we got this 3rd position, this would give us 1 office assistant for every 30 workers. And although a lot of the work now is done, we don't do a lot of typing anymore, because you do that because you're sitting at your computer, but there's a whole lot of back end stuff that an office assistant can do and save time for staff. And it'll make us, if we do it well, it will make us able to track and be more responsive to things. So that is our proposal. In the adult arena, I did combine the economic services income maintenance caseworker with the adult folks, because they are in fact working with the same population. So I'll stop here again to see if anybody's got any questions.
Jan, I have a question. What is the educational preparation for an income maintenance caseworker?
High school diploma.
High school diploma? So they don't,
Yeah.
they have to have any accounting background or anything like that?
Depending on the level, you have to have certain years of experience. There are preferences with education and experience, but bottom line, a high school diploma and a couple of years in jobs that would have customer service, accounting kinds of things, that kind of stuff would qualify somebody for this level of a job. And Susan is the one who does the qualification, so she can certainly say if I have misspoken anywhere. She's shaking her head, so I think I did okay there. Okay.
Thanks, Jan.
Dan,
Yes, ma'am.
do you have people with 4-year degrees applying for these income maintenance jobs with the hopes of moving
We have a lot of folks with
to the
4-year
service
degrees.
area?
Yeah, we have a lot of folks with 4-year degrees who apply to be income maintenance caseworkers. And a lot of folks do it in a way because they believe they could, in fact, move into the social work side of the agency, and it's a way to get your, I'll call it, foot in the door. But a lot of folks that have degrees are happy in income maintenance. It's a challenging job. You have to be able to deal with folks sometimes when they're at not their best, they're in stress. You have to be able to do a lot of in-depth research. especially if you're working in the long-term care area. And so the computer systems are involved a lot now. So we're finding a lot of folks that come in with a college degree that like and want to stay in the economic services side of things.
The income maintenance positions are the ones that we've done the career readiness certificates with Pitt Community College to make sure that they got the mathematical skills needed to do the positions.
As well as the reading skills and that kind of thing.
Yes, ma'am.
What are those scores, the score requirements?
We're asking for silver in all three. And I can't tell you much more than that. But we're getting a lot of folks with golds coming in, and we've had a couple of platinums. So the Pitt community did a study of the positions and came up with what the scoring needed to be. And I want to say 4s and 5s, something like that. But that's
Do they go to continuing ed classes for, like, I know long-term care policies and long-term care in general are pretty complex. So I'm assuming they have continuing ed or some type of education beyond, because things may change, those kinds of things.
The state does the training around policy requirements for the long-term care positions. And we say that if you're going to work in income maintenance and long-term care and making those kinds of decisions, you need to be an insurance agent, you need to be a lawyer, you need to have accounting skills, because all of those things come into play.
Mhm.
And that's why this is an income maintenance caseworker 3. It's the highest level income maintenance caseworker that we have. Anything else? If not, I will move along because we're not through yet. Okay, so now we're going to talk about our 2 largest programs in the agency, and this is tab 5. Our food and nutrition caseload, as you might guess, has climbed dramatically during the pandemic. We now have over 17,000 cases. We are the 10th largest food stamp program in the state. As a county, I think we're about 16th in population, but we have the 10th largest food stamp caseload. We will be a while, as you see from 16, we were still coming down from the last economic downturn. Now there were 2 hurricanes in there that we kind of took out because those spikes didn't stay for very long. But you see, it takes a pretty good while when you have an economic downturn just to get back to a lower level. This spike will mean that it'll take several years probably before we get back to what is going to be the new normal food stamp population for Pitt County. So this means more applications at the front door, particularly if you looked at the early into the pandemic when the first layoffs hit. We had a lot of folks coming in initially, and that has continued, but on a more gradual basis. And so it's going to be a while before we see much change there. And every one of those applications that's approved means somebody's got to review it 6 to 12 months later. If you look at our Medicaid caseload, we had something in the neighborhood of 33,000 product delivery cases in 2015. We are now up to over 46,000 in 2020. And we have the 11th largest in size Medicaid caseload in the state. We are said to have the 10th highest expenditures for the Medicaid enrollment in the state. So 10th or 11th, we hang there too. All of these product delivery cases have to be reviewed by somebody. So it's going to take a while. Well, for the last 6 months or so, we've not had to review these cases. And so we're getting back into reviewing. We're not making any decisions to terminate anybody, but we are marking those cases in such a way that when the pandemic or the emergency ends and the federal government says that we have to start reviewing cases again, and actually taken action, we will have to go back in and review all the cases that we have reviewed already and see if that particular action still needs to be taken, and then either terminate or change the type of Medicaid the individual gets. So a lot of work is going to have to be redone in this coming year. And I will add that if we get Medicaid expansion, which is not factored into this budget, that would be, it's estimated to be another 5,000 to 6,000 more cases for Pitt County, or individuals for Pitt County to be seen for Medicaid. So our public assistance programs are impacted in many ways by COVID, and it will take a while before we see any relief from that. With Medicaid, I don't know that we'll ever see much relief from it, because again, as the population grows, we see more and more folks that have that need, even if it's just a short term. So that's an area that we stay concerned about all the time. Again, we are struggling in Medicaid in our review area to meet the requirements of getting all the reviews that need to be done in a timely manner. And again, we've had some relief lately just because they're not going to terminate anybody, but we certainly are having to pay close attention to that. So I look at what we're proposing for our economic services area, and we've added the family support position in here too, which is another section of the agency. So for our economic services area, we're asking for a caseworker 1 position for our customer care unit. Customer care is our front desk. They handle the phone calls, they handle all the mail, they handle any traffic. Traffic is not so much right now, but the phone calls and the mail and all of those kinds of things have increased dramatically, as that's the way we're now interacting more and more with individuals. They scan everything in right now that comes in the door. They do a lot of support. They can also make some minimal changes. They can look things up in NC Fast and answer questions. So they're a big help at the front door for those folks back behind doing the actual regular reviews and applications. And so that caseload or that volume of work has increased. These folks also are the folks who do all of our mail work. We have a courier service that runs between our 3 buildings, 2 stops at the hospital for staff we have there, and 1 stop at ECU physicians. And we also go to the post office in the mornings each day to pick up mail. So this particular unit is handling all of that work too, which takes them away from the desk. So that's 1 position we're asking for. We're asking for 3 income maintenance caseworker 2 positions. 2 of those would be for intake. 1 would be food stamps and 1 would be Medicaid because of the volume that has increased there. And 1 additional review worker at an income maintenance caseworker 2 level. Because again, as we said, these volumes are impacting the review section as well as the application section. We're asking for a caseworker 3 position. Those would be lead worker positions. They are the folks who review our cases. With the new staff, we do 100% review of every action they take. We also do a sample of all the other staff's work to make sure that we're as accurate as we can be. These folks then will sit down with the worker if they need to help them understand what the mistake was and how to fix that mistake and how not to have that mistake happen again. So we really need to be doing more second party review. I will tell you that this is the year that we're getting an extra audit from the state. We will have an additional 200 Medicaid cases reviewed this year in addition to the normal reviews process. And if you remember, there is a law that says that every error that we make on an ineligible case, we are responsible for the full cost of the Medicaid that they may have received erroneously. Also, if we deny somebody erroneously and they've had medical expenses we're responsible for reimbursing them for those medical expenses. So it's critical that we do things timely. It's also critical that we do things accurately. And so for this reason, this year, we're asking for these positions. And everything that's Medicaid is a 25% county match. So it's a pretty good deal if we're going to be able to save the county money in the back end of it. The position in family support services, that would be under tab 6. This is in our area of crisis services. Right now, our crisis unit has struggled for the last several years due to the volume of individuals coming in. We have 5 people who handle an average of 3,000-4,000 cases a year, and they come at in spurts, I would say, because depending on what the weather's like, there is a lot of checking. We're now in NC Fast. We need to be able to run reports. We need to get things keyed timely. We need to make sure that we are paying close attention to timeframes. We need to meet the MOU. In all the areas we're talking about today, we have MOU requirements that we need to meet. The other thing that I would say is that NC Care 360, as you heard Michelle talk about, we're getting a lot of referrals through that system. And right now, Michelle is the person who is the program manager, program administrator for family support, is actually the one looking at those cases and trying to contact those folks to find out what's needed and if we're the appropriate referral source. This individual could do that and take Michelle out of that role so that she could be back doing what she's supposed to do as a manager. There are just a lot of things that this position could do to support the staff there. And on days when they're really slammed, this level position would be able to actually take an application and assist the agency in that particular area. So those are the positions that we have in this area, and I will stop to see if anybody's got any questions here. And let me say the total cost for these 19 positions to the county is let's just say $580,000. It's close to that. So 19 positions for that amount of county money, which I realize is a large amount of county money, but we would get that much bang for that. The rest would be paid for with the federal and state dollars. Now, we needed a lot more positions, but we were frugal. And I know the county will not think we were frugal, but we were frugal. Mr. Cox, you're muted.
I think in your proposal, you mentioned something like 32 positions was a starting point.
Right, right. Any questions anybody's got? Anything you need to know from the staff who are attending the meeting? If no questions, then I'll move on to the rest of our presentation. Okay, so these are our 3 buildings now. Thought in the background you'd like to see that there's the Human Services Center, we have the county office building, and there off towards the back is where our child care and employment services folks are now housed. We're calling it the annex. They're over on the same property that the Human Services Centers own. So we're asking for some support in a variety of kind of ways. Money's kind of been built into the budget for some of these things. Staff development program is not a huge expense. This is pretty much dealing with internal kinds of staff development activities. We have Augustine has put together with the support of a committee package that we look at the things that the county provides for free. We look at resources through the School of Government, resources at Pitt Community, resources online, things that we can help staff just like Ms. Nelson was talking about, if you want to get a little extra training in a specific area that would benefit the agency, how could we do that? It's also used because it gives us the opportunity to sit down with an employee when they come in the door and determine what gaps they have, and then help them figure out how we're going to fill those gaps, which is that initial piece of training. But the other thing that this allows us to do is say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? This is to help us start growing our staff so that we can have people to fill in as people start retiring, so that we can have that structure to fill those positions internally as opposed to having to go outside. So this is a minimal cost. Most of this we think we can cover through some moving around of existing training dollars. We do believe that, like this year, a lot of the training was done through Zoom or some other type of virtual platform, that probably will continue, and we'll have less folks driving out to other locations for training. And folks are not charging quite as much for this kind of training. So we believe there'll be a little bit of savings that we can plow into this to support staff and actually to support our agency. We talked a little bit at the retreat about the recruitment screening tools that we're using, that we tried out this year and that we would like to continue to use. And the information about these these activities is in tab 7 if you want to go look at it. The recruitment tool is through Human Resource Solutions. There are two, let's call them evaluations that are done. One is the SOS2 and one is PXT. And the PXT is very job specific because it's developed by using the job description. But those two evaluations help us take a look at values that folks may bring to the job. That's what the SOS2 does. And the PXT helps us look at a lot of different things, but the big thing for us is it helps us know kind of what we're going to need to do from a coaching standpoint with the folks that we are looking at to hire. It's very focused interview questions, and we have been very impressed with our trial use of that this year. And so we took 3-year average of the amount of turnover that we have had in the last 3 years, and came up with an estimate of about $15,000 would be used to help purchase these tools and get that support through this organization. We're looking at a secure document signing process. Most everybody we're talking to right now, we're seeing a lot of DocuSign and those kinds of things coming through. Our employment section has asked that we take a look at doing something like this for them so that they're not having to send things by mail or whatever to try and get people signed and get it back to where it needs to be. So in looking at that, we realized it also probably would be very helpful for our contract signing also. So we're looking at a variety of document signing softwares. We've put a little bit of money in the budget to do that based on the different pricing that we're seeing. Have not made any final decisions there. We've been asking for the last few years about document self-scanning. We have a registration system that has that we're using in the Human Services Center that has a component that we did not buy that would allow clients to come in, scan their information themselves, have their documents that they could then take home with them immediately, have a receipt showing what they scanned in and when they did it that they could have to show that we in fact got those documents. Those documents would already be scanned in, and then the folks in customer care would not have to scan them in, and it would allow a much quicker process for getting that information to the caseworkers. Also would reduce obviously the amount of contact with individuals. Granted, we've got to do a little bit of training, but of the amount of contact you'd have with folks would relieve the staff of things of work that they're doing, allow for faster service. And so we think this would be very, very important for us to be able to actually implement. Another project that came up during COVID Again, the company that does our registration software that I mentioned earlier has what they call a wait anywhere technology. And so it uses, I think the term is a QR code. And so folks could scan that QR code and they could sign themselves in and sit in the parking lot, and we could call them in when we're ready to see them without them actually having to come sit in the lobby. It's fairly inexpensive, and we think this would be something that would be very useful and could help us should we have other situations similar to what we're doing now. It also would truly help with some of the traffic in the Human Services Center, because on some days it is really, really busy in there. The Zoom, we've all become accustomed to Zoom. And so we currently have, I think it's 9 Zoom licenses, and we would like to keep those. We need to buy headsets, especially for all the staff that we have in doubled up in offices, because it's hard to have one of your office mates doing a Zoom training without a headset while you're trying to conduct an interview on the phone with somebody. So we need headsets for those staff that are doubled up. And I will say that most of our staff are now doubled up, and probably more cameras that can be used and checked out when folks have Zoom training. So those are some of the things that we have included in the budget beyond staffing. We also put in the $250,000 that was discussed in the capital improvement process that the commissioners have indicated that they would consider during the budget process. So that is included also in our department-wide needs. So again, I'll stop and see if anybody's got any questions.
And I have another question. Well, a question about the Zoom license. So I know early on in COVID, everybody started using Zoom or WebEx or Microsoft Teams. Has Zoom improved their security a lot with regard to like confidentiality? It's been my understanding that early on that it was not considered something you would want to have a confidential conversation with someone, particularly if it's medical or whatever.
Right. My understanding is that they have taken some additional steps. Whether I would want to have a medical conversation, I don't know. But for the kind of work that we're doing, for example, I don't know that we'll ever go back to having a full staff meeting, but I could meet with a section of the staff at one time using Zoom, and we could interact. We could do some internal training with Zoom. We've used it for some of our client meetings, the client and family team meetings. So we believe that this will probably be an ongoing use and something that we would consider. We will, the county is using this for their commissioner meetings and for board meetings like this. And so I have made an assumption, which may be false, that the security has definitely improved for them to be willing to do that.
So what is the cost of a license? So can 9 people use it, or how does that work with the Zoom license for social services?
Yeah, I'm gonna get Angela in there. What I can tell you is each of our licenses, we can have as many as 100 people, and we have an unlimited length of time, and it can be recorded. So your license, it depends on how many folks you want to be able to meet at a time, how long, there are varieties of levels. Now, Angela can tell you what the actual dollar amount is per license that we have. Angela?
Yeah, we have 9 licenses, and 5 of those we can actually have the actual like webcast involved. The total cost that we pay is $4,200, and it's per year. If you give me just a second, I'll look up and give you the individual cost of it. But it's fairly inexpensive.
And I know, for example, our folks over in the employment section are using it a lot. with their clients to try and connect them with a variety of resources. And so we're using it in many different ways throughout the agency. And that's why we got at least one license for every section in the agency. Each of the management team folks have access to a license.
That's excellent.
Okay, for a regular Zoom meeting that is not a video webinar, we are paying $13.49.10 for 9 of those. And that is actually it's $150 per user per license. Then we have 5 of them that are for video webinars. And for those, we are paying $400 each for that. That way they can do a Zoom meeting and they can do the video webinar when they're having that meeting. That's what we got a very limited amount of those, but all of them are at least 100 you can have at least 100 participants. So, and you can also, if you want to upgrade, when you upgrade, it only upgrades you to, it's only $50 extra when you do the video webinar.
Okay. Thanks so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
This is Jim, and I think the DocuSign software and the document self-scanning and the Wait Anywhere. I think all of those are great ideas. I think in terms of limiting and speed lining, and limiting contact. I think I commend you for researching those, and I think those would be all great tools. And I think you could probably use them across the agency once you have them.
Right. We agree. Any other comments or questions before we move to the next section?
Jan.
Yes, sir. I knew you had to get in there somewhere.
No, I just want to clear up with everybody that some of the items that you have listed on that list there may be a future item for the federal money.
Right.
And if that's the case, they'll probably put something in there saying that we can't supplant what the county would have paid for anyway. So there may be a case where we have to zero out or decline something so that we can then turn around and use some of the federal money. So I don't want anyone to think we're cutting it. It's just that we can't do it through the traditional budgeting program. And actually, if the federal money comes through before the fiscal year ends, there may be some items that we can knock off your list for next year and buy them now.
Right. That'd be great.
So I just wanted to clear that up. I'm not trying to cut.
Not yet, anyway.
And we do appreciate 32 down to 19.
You'd prefer it down to 5, but yeah. Any other questions or comments before I move into some of the things that we've been doing this past year or so to helpfully improve our service level? Not, I will move on. You heard some of these things during the retreat. We do have a family visitation coach process. It's a joint effort with Easter Seals. In fact, the employee is an Easter Seals employee. It's partially grant funded. We use Casey dollars to help or have been using in the past. And the goal, of course, is to have family stability and encourage reunification as quickly as possible. And so the goal is to reunify within 15 months, gives the coach and the family, you can observe what's going on. You can see the active parenting. You can help model some of the ways that things could be done differently. It's been really successful, but it's really intensive. She can only have 4 families at a time in the program. And in 2020, we served 7 families and 3 children returned home as a result of the work that was done in that particular program area. We have talked about permanency roundtables before. This is a grant-funded partnership with Casey Foundation, and they continue to put money into this. Again, the goal is to get children moved out of foster care and not languish in foster care. Initially, as you know, we started with children that had been in care for 5 or more years. We have now moved down to look at children that have been in care for at least 2 years. This involves everybody who knows this family. And it's sort of a brainstorming session. What are the barriers? What can we do to help get this child to permanence, whatever permanence looks like for that child. We roundtabled 23 children in 2020, 9 left custody within 6 months. The state is working to get more counties to adopt the permanency roundtable philosophy and process. And it's based, I think, on the success that our county and a few other counties have had in North Carolina with the children that have been in care for long periods of time. We haven't solved all the problems and we haven't gotten every child to permanence, but we've definitely worked with some children and moved them to permanence that we didn't think would ever be able to have a permanent situation, and we felt like they would be aging out of foster care. Our Partnering for Excellence is still fairly new. We've probably been in this about 18 months. This too is grant funded. It's focused on trauma and the adverse childhood experiences we're all talking about. That is one of the things that I think we're all focused on these days, and how that can drive your life. It can cause early death. You can have lots of social problems, etc., if you don't address those childhood experiences. So Benchmarks approached Pitt and Craven County and Trillium about this idea. They've been doing this for several years in 3 other counties. And Benchmarks is a private organization that works primarily with children's home organizations and folks who are doing various types of treatments. So they are versed very much in trauma from the work that they've been doing already. So when they approached us, we all said, sure, we'd like to do this. Pitt County had already been doing some trauma work for several years. So when we were about maybe 9 months into this, COVID hit. And so everybody had to regroup and figure out how to do this in a virtual world. But we've got all the staff have now been trauma trained. They've had trauma 101 training. All of our children now are being trauma screened using very specific tools developed through this process. All are sent to trauma specialists if that is appropriate, based on what the assessment says. But what I think, not only is it great for the kids, but for me, I think it's really improved our conversations with Trillium, because we've all been sitting in the room together and talked about on a regular basis the struggles we're all having and how we can best address those issues. Our foster parents are beginning to be introduced. I think we've had a little bit of work with them already. And again, we might be in a very different place had COVID not hit, but we lost several months there, and trying to do things remotely has probably made it a little more difficult. But we're excited about this and believe that this has a great future for the children that we are serving here in Pitt County. Because of, I think, all this work, Trillium applied for a grant and wanted to base this particular test project or pilot project in Pitt County. And part of that reason was because we have a single court district, and they wanted to partner juvenile justice, social services, and Trillium together around what we can do to enhance in-home services for children. And so what they're going to do, and they're in the process of doing that now, is hiring a liaison and a family navigator that's going to be located in our agencies, the 2 agencies, on probably a rotating basis. And the goal clearly here is to reduce out-of-home care. What can we do to keep children from having to go into foster care, group care, or go into detention in the juvenile justice system? And so we're really looking forward to getting this kicked off in the next few months. And certainly if it's successful, I know Trillium would like to do it in other locations and perhaps take it statewide. So we're excited to be part of this process. You've heard us talk a little bit about adult protective services, and several months ago, We participated in training with the School of Government for our DSS staff members and our colleagues here in the community, law enforcement, the courts, all came together. I think there was about 6 or so folks in Pitt County that went through this training, and we believe in the long run, it's going to really help us as we come together to try and address the needs of our adults who are coming in the door through Adult Protective Services. So again, still kind of new at this, but we believe it can have some impact in the future. The adult services folks have also been working really hard to look at how we can do a better job with adult protective services and guardianship. And so the team sat down and have come up with a plan that is about to take off. It's already begun to transition now as we speak. But the teams are going to be made up of staff members from both APS and guardianship. So you'd have supervisors, they would have APS workers and guardianship workers in each unit, so that the continuity of care can be addressed, so that folks can transition smoothly from one level to the other. Becomes really a team approach, both with the handoff and also with the support as folks need guardianship and adult protective services, and should help us in the long run better manage our caseloads. As you know, we're about to kick off the Emergency Eviction Utility Assistance program. We believe we'll be ready to kick off April 1. Staff is, we just hired 2 staff. They'll report to work on Monday. We're working on all the pieces that need to fall into place. And so we're going to do press releases the end of the month so that folks will know that we'll be ready to go. And then Augustine will be reporting monthly to the DSS board starting in April on what's going on, since he has taken the lead on this project. And we will be doing some type of a communication with the commissioners on a regular basis, since I know they have some real interest in this also. And then finally, when COVID hit, our employment folks really had to rethink how to operate in this new environment. And, you know, Pitt Community College kind of changed how they were doing business. NC Works pretty much went remote. So lots of virtual things going on. And I don't know that we were initially equipped or prepared to help folks get training and employment during this initial time frame. But Dee Hill, who was our manager over there, really got busy. She's really sharp. She made the connections that needed to be made, got her staff involved, and started connecting with clients again. And they are one of the tools that they're using regularly is the virtual job fair. And I will say I'm still struggling understanding the virtual job fair, but they have got it down to a science and clearly are working with all the different employers, making sure that the word and the information is out to our clients about a fair, about what they need to do, helping them prep, all of those kinds of things. So that's something that we are getting really involved with. So that is the end of our presentation. And I don't know if you've got any questions, issues, or comments that you'd like to make.
So any questions for Jan? Any observations, any comments? Jan,
Great job.
Great job. I mean, it's
That's
a tremendous.
very thorough. Uh-huh.
And I think you develop and you present a wonderful case, for support of your budget. A couple of things that struck me, as I read through it a couple times was, again, I hear the term complexity over this last year, just in terms of, how complex everything has become. And you've done a great job in terms of managing that. And service demand continues to exceed availability. And I think that was one of your summary statements in your summary there. And I thought that was very meaningful too. And we're dealing with state mandated services. And you mentioned that a number of times. So So again, again, I think it was a wonderful presentation, and certainly support your ask here. And again, and another thing that you spoke about was just, again, in the work in terms of supporting everybody's health and safety, in terms of you play such a role, the department plays such a role in that. And in terms of the service realm too. I mean, in terms of the Board of Food Stamps and Medicaid, you're kind of the go-to agency in terms of things. So, so anyway, those are just my thoughts and comments. And again, I just want to appreciate all the work that was put into this.
Okay, so what I need, I guess, from the board is any areas of concern or a vote or motion to support this budget so that we can go forward with it.
I move to support the budget submission.
And could I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, Susan, could you call the roll, please? Susan still with us?
Yeah, Susan's still with us, but she's
I
muted.
am. I forgot to unmute for a second there. I'm sorry.
We
Chair
forgive you,
Cox?
Susan. I support the budget. Yes, absolutely.
Vice Chair Bunch,
I support.
Mr. Dancy,
Support.
Ms. Nelson,
Support.
So thank you. So in terms of that, and I just want to remind the board at our retreat, we discussed in terms of, I think it was Dr. Bunch and I submitting a letter of support from the board. And Ms. Elliott and I've had a little conversation with that. So we will be drafting that and submitting that, and again, in terms of support of this year's budget. So do you need anything else from us, Jan?
No, that takes care of that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chairman Cox,
Yes.
we are over time and I have another time commitment. May I go ahead and make my brief presentation before I leave?
Absolutely. Since we've moved on beyond the budget, we can adjust our agenda here. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to bring your attention to two documents that were in your packet. One is the term limit sheet for our board members and who appointed them. So I will just do this very, very quickly. Mary Perkins Williams is appointed by the county commissioners, and her term ends in June of 2023. Mr. Cox is appointed by the Social Services Commission, and his term ends on June 30th, 2022.
Right.
Sheila Bunch is appointed by the Social Services Commission, and my second term will end on June 30th, 2023. Ms. Catherine Nelson is appointed by the Pitt County Social Services Board, and her term will end on June 30th, 2021. Mr. Dancy is in his first term as well, and his term will end on June 30th, 2022, and he is appointed by the county commissioners. If you look at page 5 of our procedures for board operations, you will see that July is the month that we do an organization review, that we have to swear in new members, returning members, and the chair and the vice chair have to be voted on. So I would encourage you to put on your thinking cap and read these documents again, and we will discuss this sometime in the future. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay well, and I will see you next time.
Thank you, Dr. Bunch. Okay. Moving forward here, kind of backing up a little bit, actually. We had, for items for discussion today, continuation of community partners discussion. If you recall, during the retreat, it was kind of agreed upon that maybe we could institutionalize having a community partner come and do a presentation during our regular board members, and we generated a list. We've talked about the list. I think in last month's minutes, there's the agencies that we identified. And if anybody has any strong feelings in terms of how we want to approach the list, or if you're okay with maybe Jan and I working together to identify the list in terms of how we're going to do that, I certainly we would be willing to do that. So any thoughts on that?
I mean, Jim, I'm fine with you and Jan working together. I think we all, the board members, did have our individual input and came up with several individual possible speakers or presenters. So I'm fine with you all putting together a draft and we could take a look at it once it's done.
Okay, thank you, Drew. Catherine, do you have any thoughts?
No, I'm good with how we have done it in the past, and I think it's value added. Absolutely.
I do too. Thank you, Catherine. So we will work together on that, and I think we'll be, looking at next month's agenda. We'll just kind of work together and pull that off in terms of things. Okay, so moving along here, Jan, we're gonna have your report now.
I'm going to move real fast because I expect the Board of Health is coming behind us.
Yep.
So our Medicaid application processing, you all should have that report in front of you. Clearly, we met our processing goals. And what I'm really impressed with is that our MAD processing was 99% timely, and our other Medicaid was 93% timely. So our folks are doing a fabulous job, even with all the folks coming in the door that they're trying to deal with. The low-income energy and SIP report, you have that in front of you. I'll just bring a couple of things to your attention. With our SIP with our low-income energy application, as of February 28th, we only had about $256,000 left of the almost 5 million that we got this year. And what I will say is that also more folks have gotten assistance this year, and I'm sure that's in part because of the extra COVID dollars that we had to help out in November for those older individuals that got that money early on, that got the November allotments. But what I will say, we served about 168 more folks this year than we did last year in the same time period. And our average payment, not counting those folks who got assistance in November, right now is about $364 per household. So we just wanted to point those out to you. As far as our crisis intervention program, our March figures, we've already approved 2,497 households. In fact, however, we are serving fewer families this year, but the payments are bigger, which is not surprising. The average payment last year per household was $163. This year, the average payment is $229, almost $230 a household. We still have about $424,000 left in that budget to assist folks March into June. So in both programs, we believe we will be able to serve many more folks. Now the LEAP program, the low income energy program, ends in March, and we will probably run out of money. The crisis program will run through June. So I want to make you aware of that. Our recruitment, we still have 27 vacancies, but we're filling those vacancies daily, and the frozen positions are getting unfrozen and advertised. And so we are constantly moving to get folks on board. I've already mentioned the COVID grants. I won't mention that again. I will point out that this is Social Work Month. And so we are recognizing our social workers throughout the agency. We've got some banners we're putting up, little activities, and our social workers get to wear blue jeans on Mondays as a special treat. We like to wear our blue jeans. So there are other upcoming events, as you know, but I won't mention any of those. So that takes care of my report unless somebody's got a question.
Thanks, Jan. Any questions? If not, we're coming to a close here. Board member comments. Catherine, anything?
Well, Jan stole my thunder. I was going to do a big hurrah for our social workers and in the agency.
You still can, Catherine.
Okay, well, I'm really, I know the value. I have 2 social workers in my department at the hospital, and I know their value. And I'm so grateful for the work they do. They really do help the least of these, and I'm just really, really glad to be part of this board and just really impressed with what goes on each and every day. And I just want to thank you.
Mr. Dancy?
I would just like to say thanks to Jan and her team. I think a lot of time people take things for granted, but her team's there digging it out daily, really dealing with difficult issues. And so I just want to say kudos to you, Jan, to your team. Keep up the good work, and we're really proud of you.
Thank you.
Yes, and I agree with both Catherine and Daron in terms of his comments, and great job on the budget. It's a great presentation, and I appreciate that. And if there are no other comments, I'm going to ask Susan I'm going to ask for a motion for us to adjourn. This may be simple because there's not many of us left here. So Catherine
Second.
and Daron seconds, and all those in favor. I'm in favor too. So Susan, I guess we're good to go. I don't think we need to do anything else.
Okay.
So with that being said, thanks everybody, and be safe and be careful, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Bye all. Thank you.